Les from Thailand here, and today's video is going to be about divorce and my bankruptcy. How I went bankrupt following divorce. Now, I've done many stories on here with regard to divorce, losing my kids. So I've had many bad things sort of happen to me during my lifetime. I'm not looking for sympathy of anybody. What I'm trying to show is that to those people who are going through the divorce or having hard times, I've been there. I've been in that deepest, darkest hole and think there's no way out. But now I live here. Listen to my stories. There is hope. There is light at the end of the tunnel, no matter what situation you're in. It's just you have to work through it. I'm a positive guy, always have been, always will be. But yes, I've been there in that deepest, darkest hole. So yes, I know how you feel, what you're going through, and that feeling that it's never going to end. But believe me, it does end. And like I say, I'm retired and living the dream. So follow up my videos. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like it, give it a thumbs down. Leave your comments down below and subscribe would be nice. So here I am again. Time to wash the car and I'll go through my bankruptcy story. So, bankruptcy. What caused me to go bankrupt was divorce. Now, I was married for a number of years and we enjoyed the fruits of my labour. My wife didn't want to work. She wanted to be home watching the kids, which I didn't mind doing that. So I took on extra jobs to be able to satisfy my wife, to being able to stop at home and look after the kids. So my job, when I first met my wife, I was a firefighter and that's the only thing I did. But I also knew I wanted to do other things. So I've always been a hard worker, good provider for my wife and kids, and that never changed. So I decided that I wanted to learn new things, do new things. So whilst we were married, I bought a house, renovated it, built 2 of my own houses. So we sort of earned a lot of money, but we had a lot of debts as well, because obviously taking on other properties, you have mortgages and you have debts and one thing and another. So although I worked hard, I'd sort of 4 jobs. I was a firefighter, I was an electrician, I was a property developer, and I had my own children's entertainment business, and I did other things, probation officer, or work for the probation service, should I say. And so I was a workaholic sort of thing. I was working 7 days a week, but my view was that when I got to 50, we had maybe 6 or 7 houses and a good retirement, because of all of the properties. They would have been finished, the mortgage, by the time I was 50, and I would have had my fire brigade pension, and I would have had me other jobs that I could have done, such as electrician or children's entertainment, rental incomes. So I looked to the future at 50-year-old doing all these things. Unfortunately, my wife had other thoughts about that with regard to when she wanted the divorce. That sort of put an end to everything as far as that was concerned. And this is where my story starts. For those watching, it does have a happy ending at the end of the spoiler alert. It does have a happy ending. So, when my wife decided she wanted the divorce, that sort of blew my world apart. And I'm not going to go into the reasons why, but it was a sad reason why the divorce happened in the first place. But anyway, that's another story. But let's just take it that divorce was happening. So therefore, I pleaded with my ex-wife not to divorce, because I didn't want to get divorced. I had two lovely children, and it was sort of anything I could do. But she didn't want to do that. She wanted the divorce. So there's nothing I could do about it. I asked her not to get divorced, but she wanted to get divorced. So as you can imagine, having the 3 houses and the debts, and we'd just come back off holiday. We had a new caravan that was on finance. The car was on finance. So she wanted me to move out of the house, which was impossible because I couldn't afford to pay the rent, give her maintenance for her and the kids and pay all the debts and that. So I said to her, you take over the mortgage payments, I'll move out. And obviously she says, no, I'm not going to do that. So then, long story short, the divorce was going on and my dealings with the courts, it was going to end up that if I carried on with my other jobs, electrician, houses and one thing and another, the maintenance payments to my ex-wife was going to be astronomical. And I thought to myself, why should I work hard so she can take the payments and stay at home? So it was then I decided, no, I was just going to be a firefighter. I wasn't going to do any other jobs. And when the divorce came, I landed up with all the debts to keep my pension. I was 8 years away from retirement, so I ended up with all the debts and none of the house. So I'd sort of lost everything. And because we were going through the divorce and the payments and one thing and another, and I stopped my jobs because I wasn't going to let them be taken into consideration, I became in debt with the mortgages, with the loans, everything else. Car payments fell behind. I was instructed to give the car back, and then the court said I couldn't give the car back because that was under dispute as to how much extra the car was going to cost me. Long story, but so I was in debt. And during the divorce, which took a couple of years or so, them debts just built up because I wasn't paying them, because I knew I wasn't working all the hours that God sent anymore. I was just a firefighter. So during this time, I contacted the Citizens Advice asking for them to help me out as far as my debts are concerned. And they contacted the various companies and sort of told them the situation. And that's what I would recommend anybody to do. Get in touch with the Citizens Advice Bureau. You need help at this time if you're in debt and you're going through a divorce. And you need all the help you can get. So, Citizens Advice said to me, you're going to end up with all the debts, Les. Looks like you're going to end up with everything. And when I got divorced, the debts were at that time £15,000. Now this was in 2002, 2003. So not a lot of money really. But because I hadn't been paying the loans, I had a debt problem, so therefore I couldn't get a cheap bank loan to pay the £15,000 off. It was going to be a high interest rate because of I was a risk now because I hadn't paid the money. So my financial advisor said, we can get this loan over a 20-year period, Les, but after 20 years you've got nothing to show for it. And she said, you've got nothing to lose by going bankrupt because you've got nothing. You don't have a car, you don't have any assets apart from your pension, but they can't touch that until I retire. And as long as I don't draw my pension before my bankruptcy finished, they couldn't touch it. So I sort of still saved my pension by going through bankruptcy, unless I drew it within the 3 years that I was going bankrupt for. So she suggested bankruptcy as a way out of this. So being all upset and thinking I've never been in trouble with having finance and one thing and another, I was very upset and reluctantly took her advice and went through bankruptcy. And I went to the courts, and it was on my birthday, 2003, and I was declared bankrupt on that day. And going to the insolvency officer the following week, with all my paperwork from the courts. I was in tears because I was upset, thinking divorced, and I was going through fighting with my ex-wife as well for getting access for the kids. So that, remember that big dark deep hole? I was in it and I was going further and further down. So everything was against us. So I broke down into tears because of my situation, going through bankruptcy. Sort of that was my world and my plans for my future, being a property owner and businessman and retiring with the wife and the kids and having a happy retirement. That was blown out of the water. So the lady who dealt with my bankruptcy came over, gave me a cuddle, and she said, listen Les, she said, I know it's not going to make things much better, but she said, as of today, you are 27,000 other people, and now my birthday was in July, so 7 months of the year, 27,000 people had gone bankrupt up to that time. And I asked her, I says, am I wrong? 27,000 people in England? And she says, no, you're just over the 27,000th person to go bankrupt in England this year. So although it didn't make me feel much better, but I thought, I'm not on my own. There's plenty of other people who are in my situation. Now we try to keep it quiet and say nothing, but for those people who don't know, that's impossible to keep bankruptcy quiet, because it goes in the local paper under insolvencies, and it goes in your area where you live. So I remember going to work one morning and there was 30 people in the room where I was, changeover of shift. So it couldn't have been at a more public location for my work colleagues and that. And one of the lads off the other shift said, is that right, Les? In front of everybody. Is that right, Les? You've gone bankrupt. Now my face just said it all. I went bright red, embarrassed and ashamed, because it's out now, people know. And it was sort of one of them moments that everybody stops and looks shocked and thinking, bankrupt? We knew it, Les was going through a divorce, but he had houses, he had jobs, he had his own two businesses, you know. And of course I didn't tell everybody what was going on, but now the secret was out. And I remember saying to this lad who said it all, who had great joy in telling everybody, because obviously it was a big scandal and nobody, as far as I knew, had gone bankrupt in the fire service before me, or I've never heard of it. So I said in front of everybody else, yeah, that's correct, that's true, I've gone bankrupt. If anybody wants to know anything, anybody wants to ask questions, ask the questions. I'm not ashamed of it, I said, anymore, because now the secret is out. I don't need to be ashamed of it. It's one of them things, and I'm here to help anybody that wants to ask any questions. And that was the time the weight lifted off my shoulders, because the secret was out and there was no shame in doing what I did, or what I did do, through bankruptcy, through divorce. It's not as if I wanted to cheat anybody out of any money, but the things I learned after bankruptcy and how bankruptcy works, I can understand now why many people go bankrupt. And just a little ditty, did you know Donald Trump has been bankrupt 3-4 times? And I remember one person saying to me, you're bankrupt, Les? I said, yeah. And she says, I thought it was only rich people who went bankrupt. No, anybody can go bankrupt. It cost me at the time £300, which I had to pay in cash to go bankrupt, and then all my debts were cleared. And as far as bankruptcy is concerned, that was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because all that stress and strain and all them letters, because you will get many, many letters from the finance companies threatening to take it to court, and threatening letters and intimidating letters, and it's awful. But they all stop. And if they do send you any letters like that or threats, you can take them to court for harassment. So from the day I went bankrupt, I never received another threatening letter. And then, for the first time in years and years, I had all my fire brigade pay for me, apart from the maintenance I give my wife and my children. I've never been like that for years, when I had so much income every month. And obviously I wasn't working any other jobs either, because if I'd worked at any other jobs, then I would have had to pay part of that towards my bankruptcy, which was going to last for 3 years. Now, up to now, that sounds pretty easy, bankruptcy, but I can tell you it isn't easy at all. You lose a normal bank account, you just get a very, very basic bank account. You don't have any credit, which was, for me, was a good thing, because I knew then I'd never get into debt again, because you can't get debt. You can't have a mortgage, you can't have credit cards, you just have the money that you live on. So for me, within 3 months, I'd saved £1,000 and I bought my car. Probably the first car I've had paid cash for it for years and years. I always got cars on credit because I was earning a lot of money, so we were always having a brand new car every 2 or 3 years. So I bought my first car for cash for £1,000, and I moved up from a crappy little 1-bedroom flat in not a very nice area to a nicer area. So things following bankruptcy actually improved for me. I was quite happy, and ironically what happened in the future was that word got around the fire brigade that I'd gone bankrupt. So there was a couple of times I'd gone to other fire stations acting as their watch manager, and I had people knocking on my station door saying, "Les, can I have a word? Can I ask you some questions?" And I said, "Yeah, of course you can." So other people who were in debt in a similar situation that I was asking me for advice on how they could clear the debts off and what was bankruptcy really like. So I would say in the 3 or 4 years following my bankruptcy, I was like an advisor telling people what options they had. And those people who were in debt, who were watching this video, there's voluntary arrangements, there's financial arrangements that you can make with your creditors. And I'll give a story about this one gentleman that I knew. And he'd set up a voluntary agreement. And if he missed this voluntary agreement payments, then they would make him bankrupt anyway. So, silly enough, that he made the arrangements, and he felt guilty about his debts. He wanted to pay off as much as he could, but it was going to take him 10 years to pay his debts off. Sort of an impossible situation. Again, he went through a divorce and all crept up on him, and he couldn't afford to pay the payments. So he came to my office and he asked me, what can he do? And when I suggested bankruptcy, because then that would cure everything, finish everything, he had nothing at all. Didn't own his car, was totally in debt, paying all these maintenance payments and one thing and another, blah, 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 blah. And long story short again with that one, he went bankrupt and cleared all his debts off. And I've seen him maybe 4 or 5 years later, and he said, "Les, that's the best advice that anybody ever gave me." He said the weight that took off my shoulders was incredible. He said, yeah, I was like you. He said, felt embarrassed and ashamed about going bankrupt, but it sorted his problems out because all of his debts were cleared at that time. Now, I'm not proud that I went bankrupt, but I didn't go bankrupt because of greed or anything else like that. I went bankrupt because circumstances dictated that that was one of my options that I had. And bearing in mind I've always paid into the system, I didn't sort of feel guilty following my bankruptcy after 4 or 5 years, because I thought, I'm helping people out here who take from society and never ever give back to society. Drug dealers, people on drug habits. And there was one person I know I used to deal with, his methadone treatment a year was £14,000 that the government paid to pay for his methadone treatment, so he didn't go back to heroin, which stopped him from committing crime. £14,000 a year. Incredible. So my £15,000 worth of bankruptcy was nothing in comparison to what some other people take from the system. And there was no help for me at all, you know, as far as housing's concerned, or council houses, or looking, because I was working. No, go and sort yourself out. So my bankruptcy took 3 years. A tough 3 years, and then I remember getting my discharge letter to say your bankruptcy's finished now, and I can virtually do anything that I want to do. I can get other jobs. There was no other payments to pay anybody else. My bankruptcy was over. So after 3 years you get used to just living on the money that you've got. And then I started my electrical business again, started that back up, started making money from that, and that was my new life, starting all over again, because I could earn money. I've always been a good worker, and I've always been able to earn a lot of money. So bankruptcy isn't all that bad really when all's said and done. It's a horrible option you have to take, and if there is any other way out of it, do it. I think bankruptcy now doesn't last as long as 3 years. I think it's only 2 years now. But don't be afraid of bankruptcy. It's a system that is there to help people restart again. Now, I contributed to the system. I paid my taxes. My other jobs that I got, I paid my taxes from that. And I'm retired and I get a pension now from my fire brigade pension, and I pay taxes on that. So as far as I'm concerned, I've had a little bit of help off the system, because the system allowed me to go bankrupt and restart my life again. Now, there's many people who take their lives because of bankruptcy or debt situation. There's always a way out. Talk to other people with regard to how they manage to get out of their financial situation. The help's there for everybody, no matter where you are in the world. So use the help if you can get it. So, like I say, happy ending. Here I am now. I live in this beautiful country, Thailand. I've been here now for 11 years. And from that deepest, darkest hole, I couldn't see any light at the end of the tunnel either. Everything looked dark, everything looked black. But I'm happy now. I'm married again. I live in a beautiful country. I have a wonderful lifestyle. So for those people who are going through hard times, send me an email. I'm an ear to listen to. I'll give you what advice I can. If I can't give you any advice, I'll send you to the people that can help you out. Don't be despaired, don't be discouraged. Help is there for everybody. So from Les, living in Thailand, retired and living the dream, until the next video, bye for now.